I see folks are starting to log on. So we're so excited for our event today with Jen Bryant and Frank Morrison to celebrate their picture book, Above the Rim. So in just a moment, we're going to get started. Just giving everyone a chance to connect. All right. I see most folks have joined, so let's go ahead and get started. All right. Hi again, everyone. Welcome to PMP Live. I'm Michelle, and I'm a bookseller with the Children and Teens Department. Thank you for joining us today. We are happy to still bring you politics and prose author events, but from the comfort of your own home. This morning, we are so excited to have Jen Bryant and Frank Morrison with us to celebrate their picture book biography, Above the Rim, How Elgin Baylor Changed Basketball, which came out earlier this week. Congrats. We'll drop the link to purchase the book into the chat box, so you can definitely do that there. You can also check out our website for other works by our guests. Today, you can ask the author and illustrator questions by clicking Q&A located at the bottom of your screen. You can also vote on your favorite questions, and at the end, we'll have time to go over some together. As always, please remember this is a creative, safe space, and we ask that folks be respectful of one another in any questions and comments. Now, on to today's event. It is my pleasure to introduce award-winning author Jen Bryant and award-winning illustrator Frank Morrison. Jen Bryant is a writer, poet, and speaker. She worked with illustrator Melissa Sweet on 3 biographies, 2 of which won Caldecott Honors. She also won AaSibert Medal and the American Library Association Schneider Family Book Awards. She taught writing and children's literature to college students, and she enjoys speaking at schools. Above the Rim is her collaboration with Frank Morrison. It has already received several starred reviews and tells the story of Elgin Baylor, an underrecognized basketball player who changed the game with his creativity and acrobatic style of play and effected change off the court with his one-man protest against racial discrimination. This lyrical biography features gorgeous oil paintings that will surely move readers. Frank Morrison has illustrated many critically acclaimed picture books, including Let the Children March, Little Melvin or Big Trombone, I Got the Rhythm, and the recently released I Got the School Spirit. He has received multiple NAACP Image Awards and the Coretta Scott King Illustrator Honor, among other awards. He started his creative journey as a graffiti artist in New Jersey and now uses oil paints to express the stories of underrepresented people in the urban landscape. And now I'm excited to turn the conversation over to them. So enjoy, everyone.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to share my screen here.
Well, good morning, Jen. How you doing today?
Good morning. I'm good, Frank. How are you? Where are you?
Excellent. I'm in Atlanta. Where you at?
I am in eastern Pennsylvania, about 40 minutes northwest of Philadelphia.
Isn't that this special? So how's your weather out there? Is it still in the 80s and 90s?
Actually, today is nice. It's actually about mid-60s, so a little fallish, but it's been a beautiful week. How about you?
Nice. I'm wearing jeans and t-shirts, and I'm freezing.
I know, right? I know. I don't want to think about what comes after this, but
yeah, right.
Yeah. But when you're snowed in, you get a lot of writing done, and maybe you get a lot of painting done too. I don't know.
Definitely.
Yeah. So I guess I'll start with going through some slides here and share my research and writing process, and then maybe turn it over to you, and you can talk about the art, and then maybe we'll have some questions for both of us. Does that sound good?
Sounds like fun.
Okay, so I have my first slide up. I like to start with this one. Hello out there. Thank you so much for coming this morning, and thanks to Politics and Prose for hosting this. Frank and I really enjoyed talking with one another and with all you out there. It's fun to be able to do this in a wider geographic area than if it were live, for sure. So as Michelle mentioned, I've done a lot of biographies, and I've been writing kids' books and poetry for quite some time, almost 30 years now. And I specialize in historical fiction and picture book biographies. So you can go to my website and find out more about those. And of course, this morning, we are, let's see if I can, that's interesting. I cannot forward my slides. So, let me see if maybe Michelle.
I'm coming back and I can share. Sure thing.
Yeah, that might be good. Should I stop sharing?
Yes, if you want to stop sharing, I can go ahead and share. Not a problem.
Yeah. Thanks. Sorry about that, you guys.
Oh, no problem.
Good. Let's see. You want to start from the beginning, I'm assuming? Yeah?
You can go to the second one.
Okay. Is that this one?
Yeah.
All right. Just let me know
That's
when to
great.
turn. We'll be good.
Boy, excellent. Good catch there. So now we're on to a little bit more specifics. Whenever I do a talk like this, no matter whether it's to young people or middle school, high school, or adults, I get the same sort of questions. And one of the most common, popular ones is, how do you choose your topic? Because my topics seem to be all over the place, right? So I wrote a biography about Horace Pippin, who was a self-taught painter and a World War I veteran. Louis Braille, who was a young man, a young boy who invented the Braille system of reading and writing. Peter Mark Roget, who wrote the Thesaurus. And August Wilson recently, who wrote 10 plays and was a self-taught playwright. So these topics seem to be all over the place. So everyone always says, well, how do you decide? Where do you find these people? And the answer is, it always starts with something small. And usually it's something small and unexpected. So this slide represents the beginning of several of those books. For instance, my biography of Horace Pippin, A Splash of Red, started by seeing just one of his paintings in a local museum. Six Dots, the story of Louis Braille, started when I went to the bank to get money for groceries, and I noticed Braille on the keypad at the ATM. Feed Your Mind, the story of August Wilson, the Pittsburgh playwright, started when I went to see a play. I wasn't expecting to write about him, but I was so dazzled by the poetic language and the characters that I started to research him. So this book that we're starting to talk about today, and we can go to the next one, is very much in that pattern. Everybody in my house plays sports. I was an athlete my whole life, and I'm still very active. My daughter is a sports psychologist. We watch the Phillies, we watch the Sixers, we watch the Eagles, the Steelers, and we're big sports fans as well as participants. So I've always had this interest, and since I'm a biographer, I was kind of keeping my eye out for an athlete that would really capture my imagination. In terms of what I read or films that I watch on TV, I'm most interested in those athletes that have an aspect of artistry. For instance, they change the game in some big way. So you can go to the next slide.
That's not you on the horse, is it?
No, but I do a lot of, I used to do that a lot, and I'm actually getting back into it just now.
You're kidding me. Wow.
Good question. Yeah. Yeah. I don't think I'm going to do that though, but so I love to read biographies and autobiographies. And I was reading Dr. J, which is his autobiography. It was written in 2013. And if you know anything about Dr. J, he played for the 76ers for a long time, and he was known for that style of play that you see on the cover, above the rim. He was just an aerial artist. And I was reading his autobiography, and he was saying that he loved to play pickup football too, as much as he loved basketball. But one day he was out playing with his friends, and he messed up his knee. He messed it up so badly that he had to have surgery to repair it. And so this was before he was even a teenager. So all he could do was lay on his couch and watch TV, and he had a cast from his hip to his ankle. Okay, so we'll go to the next slide.
Right.
And this is really how Above the Rim started, is I just read one little sentence or two in this autobiography. And it's when young Julius has a sudden realization that he watches Elgin Baylor playing on television. And everybody else is running up and down the court, and it's a very horizontal, flat-footed game, except for Elgin Baylor. He plays the game so differently, and he plays it above the rim. And he's so acrobatic and athletic, and suddenly young Dr. J, who isn't even a teenager now and is stuck on his couch with a
Hi, Jen. Hello.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Hello, everyone. My name is Carolyn. I'm running the technical stuff for this event. I just wanted to let our friends know who are watching that the Q&A is only for questions. Please stop the name calling and chat back and forth. Anyone that cannot follow these rules will not be allowed to stay in the event. So like I said, please use the Q&A button for questions only. Thank you very much. Bye.
Yeah, better behave.
All right, so that's where this book started, by reading something, which is sometimes how these things begin. And you can see that these are photographs from the Naismith Hall of Fame, and I'll get to that in a minute. So we can go to the next slide.
Wow.
This is Frank's. Yeah, isn't this amazing? Who did this? Who did this? All right, so most of you out there, if you play sports or you do art or you do another activity, we all, I think, tend to divide ourselves. You say, oh, are you an athlete, or are you an artist, or are you this or that? For me, there's never been a line there. I always felt like I was drawn to the athletes who were also artists, and Elgin Baylor was indeed one. And Frank Morrison, the artist, was able to capture that with his paint, and he'll be telling you more about that. So we can go to the next one. Now, Elgin Baylor didn't start playing basketball at a very young age, because I came across an interview with him at the Library of Congress, and where he recorded his voice talking to someone, and that's still there. You can Google that, and you can listen to Elgin Baylor telling about his childhood in Washington, D.C. So as a biographer, this is part of my research. It's wonderful if you can get the person themselves telling you about their childhood, and that's what is recorded. And he said, you know, when I was growing up in Washington, D.C., we played stickball in the street. And we weren't allowed on the basketball courts that were down the street. There was a swimming pool, baseball diamond, basketball courts, but there was a sign that said whites only. And this was in the 1940s and 50s. So sometimes at night, as you'll see on the right-hand side of this picture, this slide, his older brothers, Sal and Kermit, would dig underneath the chain link fence around the basketball court and play there anyway. We can go to the next slide.
Hey, Kermit?
Kermit. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's interesting to me, and I love what Frank did with the illustrations. You'll probably have questions about this, but many of you don't realize that I don't really see what Frank is painting when he's doing his art for the book. A lot of people think that, you know, I'm communicating with the artist and saying, you know what, on page 8, I'd like you to make a picture like this. That's not really how it works. So Frank's going to tell you a little bit more about this, but I particularly like this, this painting because it shows that even at a young age, even though he didn't have any formal coaching and instruction, that was probably a good thing for him. He played, he loved the game his whole life, even when he got into the NBA and was traveling and was in the Army and had to come play NBA games on the weekends and fly in these old broken down planes. He loved the game, and I think he loved the game because it was fun for him from the beginning. He was able to create. So we can go to the next slide. So he becomes the best high school player in DC. All right, Washington, D.C. is a big city, even in the 1940s, 1950s. He's the very best high school player in D.C. because all that stuff that he taught himself outside on the court, he brings inside to the high school basketball court, and he's a phenomenon. He's the highest scorer in the city, and yet the colleges that had basketball teams in Washington, D.C. wanted white players only. So he had nowhere to go when he wanted to go to college. So a friend was in the far west in Idaho. So if you know where Idaho is, it's almost 3,000 miles from where we are.
It's where potatoes come from.
Sorry?
Isn't that where potatoes come from? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, potatoes. Yes, the potatoes come from. Yes, they do. So, but I mean, if you can just imagine for a moment what a change that was, right? Going from inner city Washington, D.C. in this city and leaving his family and his friends, and he's only 18, 19 years old, and going to Idaho. It must have seemed like another planet. So he really had a lot of courage. And he went out there, and as soon as people saw his skill and his artistry, they thought, wow, we are really lucky to have him on our team. And they were. And he brought his College of Idaho team to a championship. We can go to the next one. I love that painting. I hope Frank talks about that. I want a print of that, Frank.
Oh, yeah, that'd be dope, right?
So again, Frank's wonderful art. So that's, as a biographer now, if you think about the process of writing, and many of you who are watching this with your class, you know that in order to make a story, it's almost like weaving. You have, if you're writing about an event that actually happened or a person's life, you have to take the different details and weave them together so they are coherent, right? So they are a whole. As a biographer, what I had to do is take that childhood information. What did he experience as a child? You know, how did he feel seeing the whites only sign on the basketball court? How did he learn how to play the game? And then what's happening in the larger world? So in the 1950s, particularly, you have a lot of historical events that are significant, both for women's rights and for civil rights. And Elgin Baylor was a part of that. And so that becomes a part of the book too. So as a biographer, and then Frank as an artist has to show how those two things came together. So we can go to the next one. I did a lot of research at the Naismith Hall of Fame in Springfield, Massachusetts. I don't know whether anyone on this call has ever been there, but I really recommend it. I'm sure they are open with precautions now in COVID, but I was able to go there before COVID, and I learned so much about the early NBA when it was beginning to be racially integrated. And Elgin Baylor was featured a lot there in the interactive exhibits. I was able to watch a lot of video and film, audio tapes, and it was just an amazing couple of days. And we can go to the next one. This is the big court at the Naismith Hall of Fame. I thought I would share this with you all because some of you out there may say, yeah, we went there with my family. It's a very, it's a family destination. All of those little squares up there are inductees into the Basketball Hall of Fame. And it's just a wonderful, wonderful place. So Elgin Baylor was featured there, and I really learned a lot about his early influence in the NBA. We can go to the next one. So Elgin Baylor there were also two other Black players on the Minneapolis Lakers when Elgin Baylor was playing in 1958, 1959. And the Lakers were the Minneapolis Lakers, and Minneapolis is in Minnesota. And this was before they became the Los Angeles Lakers. And so they would travel in trains, buses, through snowstorms, made over cargo planes. It was not anything like the NBA is today. They weren't paid very much. They washed out their uniforms in the hotel sink. They slept on beds that were too small for them. So these, big, tall men, their legs would be, over the sides of the bed. So it was not at all like playing in the NBA today. And when they traveled to the South in particular, sometimes the Black players would be turned away from hotels and restaurants. So we can go to the next one. On one night in particular, they were in Charleston, West Virginia. And you can see the picture there of the two players. On the right is a young Elgin Baylor in 1959. And on the left is Hot Rod. His name was Hot Rod Hundley. And they were good friends and teammates. The man on the left, Rod Hundley, was from West Virginia, and he had called ahead and he told all his friends, everybody in his hometown, all his family, oh my gosh, you have to come see us play. We have Elgin Baylor and he's fantastic. So all of Rod's friends and family were there. The arena was filled, but earlier that day, they had gone to the hotel to check in, and the hotel turned them away because of the Black players. And they all had to go to a different hotel that would accept all of the players. Then they went out to eat, and the restaurants turned away the Black players. And Elgin decided that evening that he was not going to play. He was not going to dress, and he was going to sit out the game. And before the game, in the dressing room, his friend came to talk to him. And he said, you know, all my family and friends are out there. How come you're not playing? And he said, I need to be treated like a human being. This is wrong, and I have to do something about it. So he sat down in order to stand up against injustice. And that made a big difference both on and off the court. We can go to the next one. Now, when Frank and I were doing this book, we couldn't know that all the sports protests that are happening today would be going on. So these books often take many years. And as I said, I first read about Elgin Baylor and his effect on modern players in 2013. But recently, I'm sure you've all noticed that, you know, there are football players and soccer players, track stars, swimmers, almost every single sport. They are protesting against injustice, right? So Elgin Baylor was really the very, very first pro player to stage a protest against racial injustice. So it's something that, you know, is coming up again and again, and that's not a good thing that it's still around and needs to be protested, but it is a good thing that people are still expressing themselves and fighting against the injustice that is still around. We can go to the next one. So in short, I'm going to let Frank now tell you all about this wonderful art that I've been sharing, and I appreciate Frank letting me use his art on my slides. So as a writer, my job is to find out all the details of someone's life and to try and present those details in an order that's both entertaining and accurate, but also to weave together the larger events in the larger world that affected them, because all of us are affected by our world, right? I mean, when I grew up, there was no such thing as a cell phone. And now this really affects our lives. You know, if you take this away, it's a different world, right? So all of us, as much as we like to think, you know, we make our own decisions, we're also affected by the world around us. So as a biographer, I try to weave the personal and the national and global together. So Frank can go ahead, I'll stop there, and he can tell you about how he does that in the art.
Oh, hi everyone, hi. It's weird because when I was growing up, I had no idea that I could become an artist. I had no idea. I grew up in the 80s, and it's weird. I grew up as a you know, in the 80s you had talent. You didn't have money, you had to have talent. Not everybody in the neighborhood could afford everything, but you know, you couldn't. I don't care how many new sneakers you had, if you couldn't run the race, you know, Nike wasn't sponsoring kids back then.
No.
You had to know how to run the run. A lot of times you had to run because dogs were chasing you. But so you learn how to run, so you use your natural talent. And when it came to the arts, it was wonderful because we had this great thing that came about called hip hop. And hip hop was crazy back then in the 80s because you had to know how to break dance. And so you had to practice, you had to focus and practice your moves. You had to know how to pop and lock and all that stuff like that. And then we had these wonderful movies that came out called Breaking and Beat Street and Electric Boogaloo and all that stuff that came out back in those days. But we didn't have like a phone. We could stop and rewind it like the Les Twins now. You could watch them and rewind it, keep watching it. You had to really be focused and remember it. And the other thing that came out was graffiti. And I was a graffiti artist. And I was like, oh wow, I got to know how to do graffiti, I could do bubble letters. And so I would draw all that stuff on the cardboard walls, wherever I could get the graffiti up. I did that kind of stuff in the 80s. And fast forward into where I started picking up picture books, it was weird because it was like, I've always drew kids, and I always drew, like if you see this piece behind me, this is like graffiti, right? This is one of my graffiti pieces. It's kind of cool. It has this robot thing at the bottom, like this, right? But what happened is I started working on picture books, and I was like, okay, how can I make it different? And so what I did is I would work on like this page.
I love that.
What I did is I would take the same rhythm that I would take with my graffiti, and I would use it in my characters, my compositions. And so it naturally makes it elongated. And so that's what I did with the style. And so when I started working on picture books, I wanted to see, how can I make myself different than the rest of the artists out there? What do I have that can make it different? And then when you get wonderful books like what you wrote here, above, I get a chance now to actually incorporate all these wonderful, great ideas. On the beautiful, there we go. There it is. I get to incorporate all these wonderful, great ideas that I come up with and throw them into the book. And hopefully the editors don't say anything, right? Hopefully the editors are like, Frank, go ahead. And the cool part was like, when I got the book, I've always wanted to paint something like this in a picture book. I thought it was like cool, because it kind of reminds me of like the logo and all that kind of stuff, and the kid is flying through the air. And so it gives me that opportunity to paint this kind of work. And I was like, wow, I'll just go ahead, you know. And so when I read the manuscript, I was like, I'll definitely take it, because the last picture book I did on basketball really didn't focus a lot on the sport. It was just basically the kid growing up. So when I got this opportunity, I get a chance to now show off. And anyone that knows me, you can Google my name, you'll see all that stuff I did in the 90s and in the early 2000s, and even right now. I paint a lot of basketball pieces. So when I did get the chance to work on this book, I was happy that I could now take the graffiti concept, take the natural feel that I have for painting, and then I can take this whole, I can actually bring this basketball thing to life. Oh, I missed the dump. I can actually bring it all back to life and put it in the words of this, put it in between the pages of this book. And then the other thing I thought was ironic was that we went through not just the pandemic, but we went through the whole Black Lives Matter. And I was like, wow, what page was it, right? Remember, Gene? What page? And then we have Elgin sitting down. We remember these pages, right?
Right.
And we get to see, and then I got to sneak some graffiti in here. I don't know if you guys noticed. I put the H, the A, and the T, and the E. I put it in like block letters, hate. And she's walking away from the hate that's going on. And so it's kind of weird where art meets reality again. And we got a chance. So it was a wonderful way to merge the two together and show that the protest is still going on, and it's still going on. It's kind of weird that it's still going on. And so that was, that's basically what I do when I illustrate picture books. I just, you know, first you got to love the story. And I don't even know who the author is. I Google that after I accept it. I like to like the, you know, I have to fall in love with the story first. And then you just do your research. Like I was talking to Gene, like I talked to you earlier, you know, what do you do? Like, how do you keep your sketches together? Or I would say your notes together. You told me your way of keeping them together. And I have a book. I have like a ton of sketchbooks that I use that I just put my notes in. Gene, you have the above the, I mean, what did you have, the Dr. J. I wouldn't do a book on the NBA, and so I could get that style, because, you know, I'm used to the Iverson and Jordan era where they had baggier pants and baggier, you know, shorts, gym shorts to run around in, and I had to go and get the, you know, I think they were like, I forgot, I don't know how they got them that small. It's just, my gosh. But and so I had to get all that research and all that stuff together, and it was like, you become a nerd, and then you just become like, you just build, I don't know what your library looks like. Mine is, I have about 8 bookshelves over there, and it is full to the top, and I have to buy another 2 more bookshelves because you have so much references that you go through and that kind of stuff. Yeah. But this book was it was a treat. One of the other things I like to do in this book is I'll show you the painting. I told people this the other day. I know girls will be reading this book as well. And so what I made sure I did was I put some girls into the book. I have this young lady right here arguing with this young lady over here, and they're all debating. And I have this kid over here. He's sitting there like, what are you talking about? What are you saying? This guy is saying the same thing. And I put trash right here because they're trash talking. They're trash talking amongst them. And then next thing you know, the next page that comes up, you got my man here flying over those guys, talking all that trash, making the shot in the whole 9. And I just thought it was cool, so I could throw some little girls in it, because it's, you know, it was like a really masculine book, so I want to throw a little bit of kids in there that, you know, don't. And then the other thing I like to do is I try to put as much diversity in my books. And sorry, the only time I could do it on this book was in such, where it was in a positive way, just at least show the, I guess that could have been hot right there looking back at Elgin.
Yeah.
And I wish they wouldn't have messed up. I wish things weren't the same. I wish they weren't like this. And so I have them just sitting there, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But
That's great. I love that. I love that painting. I just love it.
that's what thanks. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
So it's interesting how we both look at photographs too, right? That photograph that I had on my slide of the two of them. I mean, you can see where your painting draws off of that.
Yeah. I didn't even know. I didn't see that. I just thought put them on a bench.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's weird because I go.
Researching the length of the shorts and how the uniforms look. I mean, there's a lot of research for the artists too that I can't provide, or I could if you asked me, but that you end up doing on your own.
Yes. It's a lot of sketching, and that's what I tell people. If you want to do a chosen, you have to with the subject, because you're going to be with that subject. You're going to be painting the same images for at least 3 months, and like it takes to get a 32-page picture book. It takes, I mean, you think it's 32 drawings. No, it's like thumbnail sketches. Then you have to go to preliminary sketches. You got to go black and white. So you got to go to a dummy. So you're talking about maybe about 100 different sketches you have to do to be able to get to a 32-page book. And then you have to go through the painting process of it. So you're talking about maybe about 3 or 4 months to finish a book. So you definitely got to know you definitely got to at least draw it the way you can love it. So I don't draw still life. So I have to make sure, here's a cool sketch I did in this book.
That's awesome.
And so what you have to make sure is when you work on, let's go back to this page. This is at the end of the book, right? So what I really want to do is extend his arm all the way back here, but I was like, oh man, the page was going to get cut in the gutter. So I shortened it, but it gives me something to look forward to at the end of the book. So I'm like, well, I can't wait to paint that. Or if you get to like the page where Rosa Parks, I don't know if you guys saw that page. The Rosa Parks page is, you know, you sit here, you know, I didn't get a chance. And I'm like, wow, how do I paint her?
Yeah, it's a marvelous painting. Yeah.
And then if you guys may not know, I actually painted this in oil paint. And then I took spray paint and I mixed my oil with my spray paint to actually put this page together. So I have the drips going in it. The drips going out of the book. Yeah, so that's another thing I try to do. I try to incorporate different little things and techniques, and I may even go on a collage with the next book. Yeah.
It's great. It's great. And for you guys out there, I mean, I don't see, you know, I don't see the illustrations in the book until Frank is almost finished with them. And the only thing that I obviously when I saw them, I just loved how they lifted the text to a whole different level, and which was appropriate metaphorically with the subject of the book, Above the Rim. But also, you know, the only thing that I'll do is say, oh, well, here there might be a stripe needed on a uniform or something like that. I just comment on the accuracy, but as far as executing the art, Frank's doing that separately from my writing, and he's doing it from my writing. So it's a wonderful surprise when I see the art for the first time. It's just great.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to jump in, guys, and just want to give our viewers a chance to ask some questions, if that works for both of you.
Are they behaving themselves out there?
Yeah.
I'm not looking.
Now, yes. Yeah. So thank you, viewers, for starting to answer some questions. We are happy to go over those. If you haven't added one yet, you can still click on Q&A at the bottom of your screen and add one there. We're just asking folks to have it be about the book or about the process that Frank and Jen have worked on to create it, or their work. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. As you were talking about the art, though, I did want to give you a shout out. Frank, Charlotte Warren does say that your art is so good. So just wanted to let you know that. So I think that's sweet. So we'll go ahead and get started. Let's see, Luca Rizzo wants to know if Michael Jordan was alive at the time Elgin was playing. So I think I know that, but if one of you wants to speak to it, that would be great.
No.
But I think he was inspired by Elgin's play. So.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay, cool. Katie G wants to know, this is for both of you, what's your favorite NBA team, and do you have a favorite college team?
Oh, interesting. Let's see. I'm going to try and get you. There we go, back up. Frank, do you?
Do you have a favorite NBA team?
Yeah.
It's the Golden State Warriors. Thanks. They're not playing right now.
That's right. Yeah. Interestingly, Frank and I both grew up in New Jersey, and I'm from Central New Jersey. So we watched both the New York teams and the Philadelphia teams.
Yeah.
Well, growing up. So now I'm a Sixers fan and I'm a baseball Phillies fan. College, I like Villanova because I'm close to Philadelphia.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. College, I would have to go with, I'm going to go with Georgetown.
Oh, that's
hey.
Yeah.
We're in DC, so we always appreciate that. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right, Deja Moore just wants to know, do you guys enjoy sports? Why do you like sports? Do you want to talk about that a little more? I know, Jen, you touched on that earlier. We can also hear Frank if you enjoy them or not. Do you guys want to?
I played sports through high school into college. In college, I played tennis and ran cross country. And actually, I used to be a high school teacher and I coached cross country too. When I was younger, I played basketball. In fact, the other night I had an event like this, and someone who ended up being a children's librarian in Denver, Colorado, was on my basketball team, and she was on the call. So that was fun. Sports have always been a big part of my life. I really enjoy it, and especially when you have a job where you're still a lot of the days and working small. It's nice to use that other part of your humanness. Yeah. I don't know about Frank. Frank, you have a break dancer. I mean, that's intense athletics.
Yeah. No, before I played football, and we never really played baseball, stickball or anything like that. But we did play football a lot. I could run really fast, and so I was really good in track. But I played in high school, and it was and I went to Piscataway High School in New Jersey, and I was playing. I was so good. Well, I was good enough to be a freshman playing on junior. And when I was a junior, I played on varsity. And but my only problem is that I could run really fast, and I could get away, and I could block, I could hit, I could do all that stuff. And my coach his name was Mr. Higgins, and Mr. Oh my gosh, and he used to say this thing to you every time. He was an older guy. He was like, "Fly, baby, fly." He was like, "What the hell?" He was "Fly, baby, fly." And that's when you knew you were doing it. If you run up the court, if you run up that field, he would start saying that. But my problem was, I would never do the plays. That was my big problem. They're gonna make a book of me, right? I would never do the plays. So if it was a pop left, that we go to the left side of the tackle, pop right, go to the right side, or bootleg or whatever, I would run, and they would say hike, and I would do my little observation, and I'd be like, well, there's no hole over here. I'm not gonna run into a bunch of people. So I would go the other direction. And then, I'd fake the team out, and I'd go all the way to the touchdown. I would have had a 90-yard touchdown, 80-yard. I had touchdowns all day. And believe it or not, I actually had scouts looking at me as well. And it was like, oh my gosh. But one day we were playing Edison High School. Y'all ready? And I've got my other coach name. He was a brother. I think his name is Mr. Walker. I forgot this guy. Mr. Lester was his name. Mr. Lester. Mr. Lester would every time I ran a touchdown, they would bench me. Like, "Frank, Morrison, come on in. What's up with the play?" I said, I got the touchdown. We're trying to win, right? And so they would yell at me like crazy and tell me, "Frank, you got to stick to the play. You're going to hurt people," or whatever. I said, try to get a touchdown. We're hitting each other anyway. So they pulled me away. And so one game we were playing Edison. And so I was begging. We were up by like 20. And when I was like, "Come on, why am I not playing? Why am I not in the game?" I was like, "Oh, don't worry." said, Morrison, go sit down. Morrison, go sit down. I said, Coach, come on. Let me get in the game. And it's weird because I want to jump off the subject for a moment. The first time my mother came to see me play, she sat down and I ran to play. And she saw me flip up in the air like this and come down on my back. It was like the weirdest thing. As soon as she said that, she said, was that my son?
Flying through the air?
I flew right up in the air and came down, right? I got hit. I don't know who hit me. But anyway, when I get back to Edison, and it's like my coach would not let me in the game. And then finally, with I think we had 5 minutes left, I get the call. I'm on the bench like, man, I don't know what's going on with this game. I don't know what's going on. Why can't I play? Right? And they throw me in the game. They're like, Morrison, come on up. And I'm the only one clean because, it was the dirt field. I'm the only clean person in there. Everybody else is dirty, and I'm looking like a brand new player. And they get me into the game, and they said, well, Morrison, I went in there, ran up, and they called a timeout. And they started pulling everybody out the game. They started putting all the third and fourth stringers in. I'm like, okay, what is going on here? I said, okay, I got it. All right, whatever. Because I'm going to do my thing anyway. I'm going to get the touchdown. And so they called the play. It was a pop left, right? And so, y'all ready? 1, 2, 3. 3 minutes to height. Everybody went pop right. And they told me to go pop left, right? That was my play. And then, so when I woke up.
See, this is a picture book in the making, Frank.
I
see everything.
People, I think.
The whole team grabbed I went to I saw a wall of whatever the color of their team. I think it was like blue or whatever. I just saw a wall of blue hit me, right? And so when I got up and I was like, what? And everybody on the sidelines was dying. They were laughing, laughing, and the whole nine. And I had decided, this is kind of weird, is that it took somebody hit me so hard, it broke my fingernail off, right? And so it was on my painting hand, my writing hand, and my fingernail came off. And I had decided at that next practice, I had made a decision because we used to call ourselves the Crunch Bunch, like Chris Ronkowitz, Sean Wolf, and Pooh Bear, all my buddies, we all played. We call ourselves the Crunch Bunch. We go around and we play extra hard at practice, especially against the seniors because they always thought we were punks. We always play hard against them. And I looked down and my heart wasn't in it. And I said, you know what? I'm going to make a decision. I'm either going to paint or I'm going to go to the NFL. Mm-hmm. And I said, you know what? I'd rather paint. And it's kind of weird because Ernie Barnes, the artist said,
and we're glad you did.
Artist said Ernie Barnes had a career in football. And I decided to end my career in football. I think it was in 11th grade. I ended my career. And then I started.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a tough decision, but tell you what, I'm going to go ahead and bring it back to the book. We do have a few more questions. That was really interesting to learn about, though.
It is interesting.
Jennifer Hills says, we have a lot of third graders from all over DC watching today who are learning about what makes up cultural identity. So she just wants to know if you guys could share a bit about your experience in making this book, and if you want to speak to your experience in creating the art to match or Elgin's story, maybe just a little bit more about cultural identity, if you either want to jump in there.
Yeah, I mean, for me, if you were here when you saw those early slides, I try to really focus on building my skills as a biographer, which is to be a researcher and a storyteller, and then I also integrate poetry. So if you read any of my books, not only am I telling the life story of a person, making 1,000 decisions along the way about what to leave in and what to leave out, because it has to be very, very condensed in order for the artist to have room to do his or her thing. But it has to be accurate. And I don't put up any walls around who I should or shouldn't be interested in, who I should or shouldn't write about. My allegiance, my loyalty is to a good story. So I have some skills as a biographer, and I've tried to make them better and better every year. And I just point them towards someone's life that I think needs to be shared for young people. It's sort of like shining a light, right? Like having a flashlight and saying, okay, now it's going to be Horace Pippin, or now it's going to be August Wilson, or Marianne Moore, or Georgia O'Keeffe, or anybody that I did. And I'm just going to focus on them. And really for me, I mean, obviously I'm a white woman and I live outside of Philadelphia. I have a certain set of life experiences, but I'm really not claiming to have the same experience as the people I'm writing about. What I'm trying to do is shine a light on their experience because they haven't been told about before. So my research, I have to be dedicated to my research, and I want to try and be as entertaining and lyrical as I can. And someone, for instance, like Horace Pippin or like Elgin Baylor, they had amazing lives. They were amazingly courageous. They changed their field. You know, one was a painter and one was an athlete. But, you know, the average person on the street won't necessarily know who they are. And a lot of young people don't know who they are. So that's my job. My job is to find people who have amazing stories, amazing human stories. Doesn't matter whether they're man, woman, abled or disabled. Louis Braille was blind. You know, he lived in the 1800s in France. Or an NBA player. I'm curious, so my interests are really wide. So, you know, the next person may be a scientist. You know, I just don't know, but that's how I go about it.
And I'll kind of add a question, Frank, if you want to piggyback on this one and everything. What message do you guys hope folks will take away from this one in particular, Above the Rim and the story of Elgin Baylor's life? Do you guys have a, you know, a message that you hope readers will, you know, think about in relation to the book? Or Frank, do you want to talk a little bit about how this project and what maybe made it special or different from others?
Well, this project, I forgot to even mention that one of my relatives is Mickey Rivers. He's a baseball player. And, yeah, so, you know, when I paint sports, I think about Mickey and I think about, wow, I get the chance to, you know, to highlight African Americans in sports. But when I do paint, I try to paint the reality of where we live at. And a lot of times, if you turn on a television and you'll go, I mean, I can go down for days, you know, I don't know how many channels are out there, but we rarely see a lot of positive images of African Americans on television. And what I try to paint is I try to incorporate that into my picture books. And what I do is I try to paint the reality. We don't live in a segregated world anymore. And so what I do is I integrate my picture books. And one of the sad things about a lot of movies coming up back in the day, and even current movies, is that you'll see like one or two African Americans doing something in a book or in a movie or in a cartoon or even anything really. And so what I like to do is I like to show that we can too be the heroes. We're not just sports players. We can do anything. We could be that, anything in the book. And I'm glad that we do get to shine. And like I do, I like to show, I want everyone to know that you can, from anything, become what you want to be. You know, want to be, you know, if you work hard. And that's one of the things I think about Elgin. He worked hard. He practiced. Just like it takes that to be successful in life. You need to practice your craft. You need to practice whether it's art, whether it be writing, whether it be, you know, whatever your talent is, you need to practice with it. And then the results are what it may not end up in the NBA. You may just be if you may be a ref, you may be the team owner, you know, or you may own a bookstore.
No, that's great. I think that's good advice for any aspiring authors or artists that we may have watching. Just practice, hard work. I think that's wonderful. Let's see. We do have a question from Warren Brown. Wants to say the illustrations look amazing. And then wants to know a little bit about the process for painting. Did you use the spray paint on any others other than Rosa Parks, or were they primarily oil paintings?
Yeah, I'm just like that kid that played football. I always go against the rules. Whenever I can sneak in either graffiti or spray paint in a book, I do. This is the first time. Well, I did it in another book. It's The Roots of Rap. I did a whole piece. The whole background is in spray paint, and then I have the character on top. So I usually just work in spray paint, oil paint. Sometimes if I can sneak in some great paint markers, I have some really nice ones over here. I'll just sneak it in there because I want to leave little Easter eggs to writers that are out there, graffiti artists that are out there, to show them that there's other avenues. Cause is a great artist that came up through the streets. Basquiat is another one.
Yeah.
He's doing a couple of things, but I want to let them know that not only can you do these letters, if you can, there's other places you could take it from just doing it just on the streets or on, you know, if they choose to. There's other avenues.
Mhm.
All right, thank you. And then let's see, for Jen, let's see, I wanted to just check in with you. When you go to write one of these picture book biographies, what is the hardest part or what's the most fun? If you want to speak to either of those, and then we'll probably have time for maybe one more question or so, and then we'll wrap up, folks. But,
yeah. Well, it's interesting. I mean, each book is different, and you, in a way, even though I've had experience doing it, you kind of start from scratch. So everybody out there, no matter what your age or background, you've probably put a puzzle together, right? And then when you open the box, you stand the box up because it has the picture of what you're going to have at the end when you put it together. Well, writing a biography or writing a novel is like putting a puzzle together, except you're also making the picture as you go. So the picture, there's no picture to look at. You're actually creating the puzzle picture as you go. And so what you're doing is your research is all the pieces. And I have to say, for me, my tendency is to end up having a manuscript, which is just the written words, not the painting, but the written words that tell the story. It's usually at least twice as long as what finally gets into the book. So what I've learned to do is that I write, you know, all the stuff that I find interesting, I organize it, I try and make it lyrical and poetic, and then I rely on the editor to say, you know what, I like this scene, but not this one. Or I want to hear more about I want to hear more about sneaking under the fence to play at night, and I don't really want to hear about when he was in the Army. All right, so that didn't get into the book. It got into the timeline. So that's interesting. All the thousands of decisions that as a reader, you don't really see, you know, just like when you go to a movie, you don't really see everything that ends up on the cutting room floor. You just see the movie. A book is like that. There's a lot that Frank and I do. You know, we try things and then we make decisions, and that thing may not fit in the final book. So that's really always the most challenging part of writing a book, is the decisions behind what gets left in and what gets left out, so that just the very best gets left in.
Sure. No, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Irene Vongo wants to just let you know, Frank, I love your art. It is so beautiful. So just wanted to give you that shout out there.
Thank you.
I know. Lots of wonderful comments and questions. Sadly, we don't have time for all of them, viewers, but I want to just ask you both one more. What are you working on now? Do you guys have any upcoming projects?
You want to go, Frank?
Oh, what am I working on now?
You're both probably busy.
How long do you have?
I have a ton of projects I'm working on. But picture book wise, I'm working on a book on Halloween. That'll be out for next year. A cool Halloween book. And then I'm working on a book called Kick Push, and that's the book I actually wrote. And it's about skateboarding, and it's my experiences with skateboarding. I went down the hill with no shoes on and almost broke my neck. And my kids enjoyed it so much that they picked up a skateboard and they started skating. No, I'm joking. That's how I recall them skating, but they'll tell you another story. And so I love the fact that it was two things that happened. They were able to get out of the house. They broke the stereotypical basketball, football. They were doing something different. And I love the fact that it was I had kids from all over. Some people would come in from other countries to stay on the house. Stay on my couches. And so it was a multicultural fun that these guys had, and they're still skating until today. So I just made a book about it.
Very cool.
It's awesome. I would like to read that. That's great. Yeah, very cool. That's a sport I haven't done, skateboarding. I'm not likely to pick it up now. I'll get on the back of a horse, but I don't think I'm going to do the skateboard thing. And I am actually working on another picture book biography. The artist is in Japan, and it's a book on Patsy Mink. And she was the first woman of color in Congress. She was from Hawaii, representative from Hawaii. And she was also the driving force behind Title IX, which Some of you out there may know Title IX is the law that came into effect in 1972 that allowed more equity between women and men in jobs, in education, and also in sports.
Wow.
Very cool. Well, I'll look forward to both of those projects. All right. Thank you, viewers, for joining us today and for those questions. Thank you, Jen and Frank, for joining us. We were so happy to have you. Remember, viewers, you can still click the link in the chat box to get your own copy of Above the Rim. It's excellent. As an independent bookstore, just please know that we're so thankful for your support. You can check out our website for updated event listings, and you can follow our Children and Teens Department on social media and under @Kids and Prose. So that about wraps up our time today. Thank you again for joining us, Frank and Jen. And
thanks for having us.
We hope to see everyone again soon, and keep reading and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks again.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks. See ya.
Thank you.